Hi everyone. Just giving it a minute here. And let's see. Good to see y'all. So, we are going to be spending today actually changing gears just a teensy bit. I had mentioned that we're going to do end papers together. That is not going to be the case today, and I have a reasoning why. But what we're mainly going to do is glue our spines and then round it together. And the reason for the end papers not being something I'm doing jointly during our live today is because I would need to give it some time to actually dry rather than being able to jump into the rest of the process. And so it would be a lot of you just staring at me while it dries, which is already going to be the case with us rounding the spine together. And so just a little heads up that we're not going to do that together today, but there is a tutorial up on my YouTube channel. I'll try to, I don't know if I'm fancy enough to go ahead and try to link it here or show it on the screen, but I will try and we'll see if that actually works out. If not, you can just go to my Bind Along playlist, and it's also titled the same thing, End Papers, and so you can follow that piece along. So what I have gone ahead and done to prepare us for today is glued on our end papers. My text block is nice and snug. And here right now you can see that it is real, like my book press is well loved. And so put this in here. And now what we're going to need for today's purposes is our PVA glue as well as a spatula to glue with. Again, if you don't have the specific glue, you can go ahead and use any glue that you have available to you. And I do recommend using a spatula rather than a brush of some kind because it's easier to peel off the glue from these brushes. Like if you see, this is from earlier today, another binding project, it peels right off. It's not as easy to get them off the brush thistles. That's what they're called for actual brushes. So I just recommend going ahead and using some kind of spatula. So I have that. You are going to need a hammer of some kind. Preferably you want one of those rounded, I think, mallets. I don't know exactly what they're called. Maybe I'll try to add it in later. But one that's rounded that's going to disperse the weight a little bit better. No, I didn't have one of those and I wasn't about to go out and buy them, right? I am of the mentality that you don't necessarily have to buy new things to be able to bind. And so I have this hammer available to me, and that's what I'm going to use for our tutorial today. And other pieces that we're also going to do, if you are going to be rounding, you will be ready at the end of today's steps to go ahead and add your mull or your cheesecloth onto your text block as well. And then if you want to add a ribbon bookmark, this is the time to do that. So you'll need your ribbon bookmark, your mull, and then if you want to add on headbands and end bands, you can go ahead and add those on at this step as well. So we'll start by just adding a layer of glue to our spine. And we're going to give it just a few minutes, like maybe 2 to 5 to get gummy after we actually add it on. Now, the glue that I'm using thankfully dries very quick, so hopefully you won't be staring at me for a long time, but we want it to just dry a teensy bit without solidifying completely. And don't do what I just did. Gosh, don't go over your bookmarks. I should not have done that. It's been a while since I've actually rounded or bound something this big, but try not to go over the actual bookmarks as much as possible, just the spaces in between, or the ribbons, I mean, just the spaces in between. And this, I think, goes to show just again, as we go through the process, nothing you do is going to be so egregious that you can't fix it later on, including what I just did, right? Going over the actual ribbons. All right. There's a lot of thread here that I'm not a fan of. It's kind of messy, but it can be helpful to have a bit of extra thread, so I'm going to keep it in there. And again, no one will actually see this at the end of the day, so I'm just going to glue right over it. The other piece I want to mention, I am not an expert in rounding spines by any means. And usually, when you round a spine, the other part of the process, it's a separate process, but one that usually requires a bit more fancy materials, is called backing. And so, rounding will help the structural integrity of your spine, but backing is what helps it stay in place. And so, I've never actually backed a spine before just because I don't have the correct press to be able to do it. But the way that I learned to do this and the tutorial that I followed along, at least for rounding my spine, is from DAS Bookbinding, DAS Bookbinding. I'll try to link them below as well if I remember. And they're an excellent like master binder essentially, and all of their videos are fantastic. Always 10 out of 10 recommend. But that is how I learned to round my spine. But if you do want to watch someone who's an expert do it, I would recommend going and checking out their page instead because they are very, very good at what they do. Okay. And in the tutorial that they have, they actually show how to back the bind as well. But the process essentially, the difference between rounding and backing is that rounding is literally what it sounds like. You're rounding, you're giving a curvature to the spine. But what backing does is it creates a little bit of space so that your boards are sitting very snugly against your front and back. So your case is sitting like at the same level as the rest of your spine, essentially. It's hard to explain, but it is a part of the process that adds a little bit just more structural integrity. Okay. So you go ahead and you add just a layer of glue on. That's the first thing that you're going to do. And we're going to go ahead and let that just get a little gummy, maybe for a couple of minutes here. Like give it about 3 to 4 or 5 minutes. I don't want to give it too long, but I want it to get a bit to take on some of that glue structure. Words are hard today. Okay. One other piece that you're going to need that I didn't talk about that will be helpful and save your services is some kind of wax paper. This is just wax paper that I've taken from the kitchen, from the pantry and what we had, but that will save your surface and also make sure that your spine, your text block is not sticking to whatever you're working on. Alrighty. And so letting that dry a little bit. But yes, there's a lot of great resources for how to do this again, because I'm not an expert by any means on rounding and not even an amateur with backing spines or backing your text block in general. But there is DOS bookbinding, which I usually very regularly watch. Gosh, there's others. The names are eluding me, but I'll try to post more links in the comments as well for folks who've been helpful as I was learning the process. And again, if you want to just watch someone who's a little bit more experienced, I shouldn't say a lot more experienced in this process than I am already. Give it just a teensy bit more time. And the reason that you don't want to glue over the linen tapes is because it gives you more flexibility as you are rounding. I did for the middle one. That's okay. We're going to go with it and work with what we have. And as you can tell probably from looking at my book press, I also paint my edges pressing it in this book press. And so there's paint all over it. That's okay. It's a well-loved press. I have been looking into different types of presses though recently. I really want one for backing my spines because it's something that I would like to try. I don't know if I will be able to get one anytime soon. They do tend to be quite expensive, around the cheapest one I've seen is like $200+. And the reason for that, like the difference is essentially when you have a backing press, you have edges that are sloped, and because you're going to be taking kind of a hammer to it, you can damage the book press and the wood if there isn't something protecting it. And so usually there'll be a metal plate of some kind protecting the edges as well. But alrighty, I think this should be okay. I'll try to add kind of skipping as well so you don't have to sit here watching literal glue dry with me. So you give it just a teensy bit more time. I think something I really enjoy whenever I get glue on my fingers is to peel it off. I don't know if anyone else does that as well. Okay. Let's see. Just teensy bit more. And at this step, if I wasn't recording, I would typically just walk away from my press, just give it like 5 to 10 minutes, let it dry, and then come back afterwards to start rounding the spine. One piece that I didn't mention that you can do to make sure you're getting a straight spine, something that I've seen, it's called like the toothpick method. Really, really nifty. I don't have toothpicks, I just use needles, like long needles. And what you do is you stick it through your French links or whatever kind of stitch you've used, and it will hold up against the edges of the book press. And so that way it should be nice and even when you're sticking it along. Something else that I've done is just pushing my text block down, like upside down, so that it levels on whatever surface I have. And that's what I did this time. It works pretty nicely. Either way, it's helpful to make sure you can get this as straight as possible. Okay, let's see. Still not as dry as I'd like. We'll give it a teensy bit more time. You just want it to get gummy, though. That's what I'm looking for when I look at this, and I keep touching it because I want to see if it's uh, gummier to the touch. And right now it's coming off wet, so I want to give it a little bit more time to dry a teensy bit, and that'll help the spine hold in place while we're actually taking a hammer or whatever tool you're using to it. Teensy bit more time. Bookbinding can really be a test in patience, honestly, like with being able to make sure you're working through each part of the process and giving it its time and not rushing through the different parts. Hi there. I am literally watching glue dry right now. So if you come on here and you don't hear me talking, that is why. We have so far talked about Endpapers. I did not do that in the live today, and that's because there's nothing different about Endpapers on this text block just because it's larger than on the smaller text blocks I've done before. So there's a tutorial for that. You on my page, you can follow along exactly as I did the Endpapers in the last bind along. And then started with this piece right here, put it in my book press. Words are really hard today. In my book press, and I've added a first layer of glue to my spine and made a mistake right here where I glued on the linen tape. I haven't done this in a while, forgotten how to do it because of that. And you don't want to add glue to your linen tapes like I did. Don't make that same mistake. We're just waiting for it to get a little bit gummy. It's still kind of wet, you can see, but you want it to be just not coming off as wet as that, but just with less give. And you'll notice I haven't glued like every single part. That's okay, that's all right. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna go in with another layer of glue after this first part is over. It's been about 5 minutes that I've let it sit, I think, that we've been watching glue dry together. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up. I've jammed it in there real tight. I don't know if anyone else's fingers hurt when they do this process of like cutting with a guillotine and opening up your book press. I feel like mine are always aching. Okay. Okay. And let's see. If you can get some wax paper in between when you actually do this, that'll be helpful for you. I wasn't able to get it in there because of how thick my text block is. So I'm just trying to separate it with my ruler currently so that it doesn't stick when I try to get it out. I don't want it to lose its shape because it's not super gummy yet. But we are going to get it out right there. I'm literally hacking it out. Okay. And you can see it's kind of staying in place. I'm going to push this down so it doesn't make a loud noise later. Okay. Alrighty. And so you can see it's kind of staying in place now without me having to hold it completely. And so that's kind of what we want. That's the level of gummy that we want when we do this. And so like I'd mentioned, put down some wax paper. It's going to make your life so much easier. Your text block won't stick to it. If it does, you can peel it off really easily and nicely. And the point of the rounding process, it's exactly as it sounds. We are rounding the text block, right? Giving it a curvature on the spine. And what you want to do, you want to have your text block with that first layer of glue that's gotten a little bit gummier. Don't glue any of your linen tapes like I have. You're going to want your hammer, and we're just going to go at it, right? And the way that we do this is we hold our text block in place, and I like to just put my finger in between to my end paper and just holding it there. And we're going to go in. Actually, you know what? Let's not do that. I'm going to hold the end paper right here, and we're going to gently go in and just hit the spine. So you'll notice it's starting to give a little bit there. Let me try to see if I can move my camera a teensy bit to give you a better view. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. Okay, but I'm holding it in place and we're just going in gently. And you don't want to hammer at the middle of the spine. We're only going to hammer towards the top and the bottom. Okay. And you can see it's curving in nicely. Okay. And I'm going to just do that on each side and just continue hammering. And you want to be really gentle with how you do this. You don't want to use a lot of strength. You're going to notice I'm doing it really, really soft. Okay. This is actually curving so much nicer than I thought it would. And you just go in. And you'll notice the motion that I'm doing with my hammer is going just upwards and outwards. I'm moving out. I'm moving out. Okay. I'm gonna flip over, do same thing again. Just going to continue hammering and move it out. Okay. And I'm just going to keep doing that a couple of times. And you'll notice I am holding my hand on that end paper still. And we're going just outwards gently. And I think the first time that I did it, actually rounded my spine. I tried to do it after the glue had set. So much harder. Don't do that. Use it while it's still pliable. Take your time. And I'm okay. I don't really like the way that this looks right now. You can see there's a curve to it. It's not even. So I'm going to go ahead and just try to even it out a bit with also hammering just a teensy bit towards the middle. Okay. And I'm hammering at the middle just a teensy bit because I don't like the way that looks. But you're going to just eyeball what that curve should look like for you. It doesn't have to be anything excessive. I have curved spines way less than this before. I'm just going ahead and really taking that hammer to it because of how thick my spine is. Part of me really wants to try to back this just with my fingers and see how well that works. But again, I don't know if it will actually work out because it usually does require more expensive materials. Okay, and I'm going in the opposite direction just because it's not even, like my hand is not landing evenly as I do this on the opposite side. And so eyeballing that, right? I want to even it out. You can see right here, this is not curved as much as this side. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try to even that out because my hand is not landing the same way. Let's see. Okay, there we go. I think that's pretty good. I think I'm fairly happy with that. But really just the key is have patience. Like I mentioned, I've only rounded a couple of spines. By no means am I an expert on this, but you learn as you do it more and more. And that's the whole point of any of this, is just to keep learning. And so ideally I would back this in addition to rounding it, but like I mentioned, I don't have a backing press. I don't have that fancy equipment for it. Maybe we'll try a little bit with our fingers today, see how that works out. But if not, that's okay as well. Rounding is better than not rounding, especially with such a thick spine. Okay. One more time. I'm gonna go in, just the other side. Okay. I think that's pretty good. You can see right there what that curve looks like. It's not perfect by any means. That's okay. Again, because I'm learning, you are going to be learning, and if we knew how to do this by now, we would be experts, right? We'd probably be in the field. But it is good for our purposes of being hobbyist bookbinders. And so what we do then is we try to stick it back into our press really delicately. I'm going to go ahead and mute for just a minute so you're not bombarded by sound from me finagling with this press. Okay, so you want to get it in there really carefully and try not to lose the curvature and the rounding that you've done. You might need to just move it around with your fingers. It should be pretty pliable at this point. And so you can go ahead and do any shifting that you need, set it correctly in place while it's in the press before you actually close up the press. And so I'm just using my fingers to make sure the curve looks nice like I want it to. Okay. And I want it to be even. All right, I think this might be the biggest curve I've done when rounding. All right. And so once you have it in there, once you're happy with how it looks, just close up nice and tight. Tighten it all the way. And this is actually how I've seen someone backing their, let's see, backing their spines before. I don't think I'm going to try to do it today. I'm not feeling brave enough, and I have not watched enough tutorials on doing that. But again, I'm not sure if I want to spend $200+ on a backing press. Okay, once that's in place, you can see this is nice and round now at this point. Let me move out just a teensy bit. Okay, you can see this is nice and round compared to when we started. Much, much rounder, right? It's got a nice curvature to the spine. And so once you've done that, oh gosh, I should have looked. Okay, actually, no, I can tell from my typeset. Once you have done that, we're going to go in with another layer of glue. And do a nice layer, and you can go over your linen tapes this time. So you'll notice it was not the end of the world when I went over one of them. You just get a lot more like nice movement when you aren't gluing over your linen tapes the first time round. I actually really like the way that this looks. I wish I had a backing press and you had a back. I think it would look phenomenal. Okay. We're gonna go in, and you'll also notice with even that first layer of glue that I put in there, a lot of my stitches were not tight. I had some loose ones there, if you remember from the end of my last live. And I'd said to folks, like, don't even worry about it. Like, is it ideal? No. Does it matter in the end? Absolutely not. And you can see here, like, it has not changed anything. It's okay if your stitches are a little loose. Just get all that in the cranny. And you want to make sure you glue all the spaces in, glue in between all the signatures nicely. want too much glue. You don't want it to be dropping like mine is right there, but you want it in all the way. Okay. I'm so happy that it's such a big bind. I've been complaining about the size of this text block for a while now, and I think it looks so beautiful after being rounded. I'm quite pleased with it. Okay. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is add our bookmark. If you have a ribbon bookmark that you want to add, I will be doing that with y'all today. We will do that right after we glue this up. And there's two different ways to do that. So one way is going to be coming just down and under the book or the bind. And the other way, I actually explain it much better in my other tutorial that I have up. And the other way is if you have a charm, you're going to go around the bottom and then back, or around the, bottom and back through the top. We're not doing that today. I don't have a charm for this bind. And so we're just going to do a simple bookmark that's going down. Okay, it's a good amount of glue. We're going to add some more when we get our mull on there. So that's good for now. All right. Now, this is why I was like, crap, I don't remember which direction is up. The way that you add your bookmark is going to depend on like where the front of your bind is, right? This is the front of mine, I can tell from my typeset. And I'm gonna go just down. I just want my bookmark to come down the bottom like a classic like journal or a book. It's not gonna come around to the top with a charm. So what I'm gonna do, and I've pre-measured this out, you want to start maybe depending on if you have a charm or something heavy, you are going to start probably around halfway, a little maybe more than halfway up, and measure just this distance and then measure coming down around the bottom. And you don't want it to peek out too much, just a teensy bit. So I don't have precise measurements because I never measure this precisely. It really is up to just your personal preference about how you want the bookmark to look. So I have measured this out before, and I'm going to do it halfway right there. I'm pushing up a teensy bit because I don't want to waste too much of the mark. Okay. Alrighty. Now the second step that you want to do, I'm not doing it in this video or this live because I am going to hand stitch my headbands and end bands. That's something you do not have to do by any means. There are beautiful printed ones. Let me see if I can find one. Beautiful printed ones that come on Amazon. You can go ahead and buy something like this. Why am I showing you on that camera when I have this here? You can buy something like this from Amazon is where I've gotten mine. They're linked down below in the description. But I have really just found this love of like trying to learn how to sew my own end bands and headbands, and so I'm not going to be doing it in this video, but I did do it in my last tutorial. So if you want to see how that's done, it's really self-explanatory. You cut it to size, you glue, and so just the top part should be peeking out. But that's something you can do. And the next step after you have done that is to glue your mull on. Now, I do not have precise measurements for this either because I eyeball it. I am of the belief that you do not need precise measurements for everything. For some things, yes, but for the things that aren't going to be visible in the end bind, I don't think you need precise measurements. And so the way that you do this or eyeball it is usually the width of the spine, right, plus about 1 inch on either side. 1 to 2 inches is fine. I prefer to go a little bit more conservatively because I'm trying to stretch my supplies out, but I use 1 inch on either side, and I typically don't go all the way from the top to the bottom. I just go a little bit below what the top and bottom might be. And so you can see there's a little bit of space on the top and the bottom, but this is good right here, and we're going to add more glue. Lo and behold, more glue. But the point of the mall really is to add, again, strength to our spine. It's going to help hold it in place. And so we will glue that on nicely. And we really want to just go in and fill in all these squares that we have. There's a lot of glue on my fingers right now. Very messy. And so go ahead and just fill in with glue on all of these squares. And try not to get glue on the sides because it's going to make it stiff and hard to paste in later on. All right. Just fill it in nicely. And this is another reason why a lot of times you'll see PVA recommended, is because it layers on so nicely without getting clumpy and thick. And I've actually seen that, like, most people who are in bookbinding, I wouldn't say professionally, but who do this more seriously and not necessarily binding just fanfic, tend to mix their PVA with wheat paste. I have never tried doing that before. I haven't made wheat paste, but I've heard it's a really good mixture. It makes it so that the PVA or the glue that you use doesn't dry up completely and is a little bit more forgiving if you make mistakes. That is something I want to try to do in the future, but for the time being is not on the top of my priority list. If you do try it though, let me know how that works out. I believe DOS Bookbinding has a tutorial for that as well. Okay. You just fill in all the squares nicely. And I'm going to go on top of the bookmark a teensy bit as well, just a little bit of glue. And the ribbon that I use for my bookmarks is usually some kind of satin, like about, I think, 3/4 inches, maybe, no, this might be 1/2 inch. Yeah, about 1/2 inch, a little less than 1/2 inch ribbon. And it closes up nicely inside the bind. Okay, but that's basically it right there. We have rounded our spine. Again, apologies that I didn't do the Endpapers live with y'all. I think it would have just added so much more time unnecessarily and made for a much longer video. There is a tutorial up in, again, my channel that you can look at for that step specifically. But we have added our Endpapers, we have rounded our spine. Again, you only really need to do this if your spine is bigger than 1 inch. And that's because, again, the spine tends to collapse in on itself if you don't round it. Ideally, we would be backing as well. Again, I have never backed a bind before because I don't have the equipment to do it. And frankly, I just haven't actually tried using the equipment I have to do it. But you don't need to do that by any means. You can just round, and rounding is better than not rounding for something that's this thick. We have added our mall and we've added a bookmark. This is completely optional, as is the headband and the end band. You don't have to do those pieces if you don't want to. They are purely decorative. I wanted to. I really like the way that they look. But that's about it for today. That's all I have. For our next time, I believe we're going to be making our case. If I remember correctly, we are at that step. We are so close to having a completely finished bind, but we'll be, I believe, making or designing our case. It's one of those two things. Nothing that you need to really prepare for at this time. Maybe I should just go ahead and look without guessing what's on our list next. Let's see. What are we going to be doing? I feel really silly for not knowing. All right. Okay, yeah, we're gonna make our case next week. And so the materials that you'll need, apologies for for that. You're going to need your chipboard. We're going to use that. You're going to need some kind of cardstock material, and you will also need, let's see, some PVA glue, a spatula to be able to do that, um, a ruler, and you will need an X-Acto knife. And those are the gist of what we'll need for when we make our case. Um, not too many items. We are so close. And then after we make our case, we are going to design our cover, what that will look like. And that's the point at which we decide, like, what does our color scheme look like? What do we want it to, how do we want it to look, essentially? What kind of motifs do we want on it? And so we'll talk about that together as well a little bit. But that's about all I have for today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our live. But I hope y'all have good luck on rounding. It's really not too complicated. I hope I made it look easy.